The Wallace Center is a business unit of Windrock International and is the host of the NGFN webinar series. The Wallace Center has been a leading organization in the movement for a more sustainable and equitable food system for over 25 years. Today, the center supports entrepreneurs and communities as they build a new 21st century food system that is healthier for people, the environment, and the economy. The center serves the growing community of civic, business, and philanthropic organizations involved in building a new good food system in the United States. In particular, we're focused on advancing regional collaborative efforts around the country to move good food, healthy, green, fair, affordable food beyond the direct marketing realm into larger scale wholesale channels. This webinar is an excellent example. The National Good Food Network, or NGFN, is an initiative of the Wallace Center. It is structured as a network of networks, ensuring efficient flow of information and innovation from boots-on-the-ground projects to the national level, and then back down to the grassroots level across the nation. The Wallace Center coordinates and supports the network. Our goals are to work with the growers to ensure that there's an abundant supply of good food to meet the high consumer demand for the product, to collect and disseminate the best models, stories, methods, and outcomes, and to ensure that policymakers are informed about the wonderful successes our network and partners have had so that we can continue to increase support for regional healthy food. You can learn more about the great work of the National Good Food Network on our website, ngfn.org. One major piece of the NGFN's work is the NGFN Food Hub collaboration. For the last couple of years, we have worked to support the growth and success of food hubs across the country with a four-pillar approach: networking, research, such as case studies, technical assistance, and intensive work with 9 study hubs and some regional food hub networks. Well, one of our study hubs, Cherry Capital Foods, will be presenting today. We have a library of fantastic resources on food hubs. You can get there directly by typing foodhub.info into your web browser. This is a collaboration with USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, Center for Regional Food Systems, Farm Credit Council, and recent collaboration partners Wholesome Wave, School Food Focus, and notably for this webinar, the National Farm to School Network, all bringing unique perspectives to supporting this linchpin of regional food systems. Before I introduce our panelists, I wanted to show you this slide. This is from last month's webinar where we presented the recent National Food Hub survey executed by Michigan State University's Center for Regional Food Systems in collaboration with the Wallace Center. We see here the different types of customers that food hubs across the nation sell to. It also shows the average amount of hubs that sell to that type of customer and the average percent of total gross sales that those customer types filled for food hubs selling to them. It's notable that more than 1/3 of survey respondents sell into the K-12 market. Though the percentage of gross sales is actually relatively small at 11%, it's not insignificant, and informal reports indicate that this market is growing. So now let me introduce our first food hub in Farm to School case study and our panelists. Danielle Herzik is an alumnus of St. Ignatius High School in Chicago and the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, where she graduated with an MA in Physics and Fine Art. Prior to launching Gourmet Gorilla, Danielle worked in the financial services industry for 13 years in sales and management positions for John Hancock Financial Services and MetLife. More recently, Danielle was a graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program in Chicago and the 2012 Rising Star Award recipient of the Women's Business Development Council. Jason Wheaton spent 12 years in environmental consulting and received his MA in geology from the University of Aberdeen, UK. He is a member of the Great Lake Food Hub Network, and through his leadership at Gourmet Gorilla was awarded a 2011 HUFED grant administered by the Wallace Center to bring fresh produce programs to underserved areas using schools as hubs. Jason's work centers around helping build healthier bodies and minds in our schools and creative, innovative ways to produce healthier meals and source more sustainable ingredients from our local food system. Jason, Danielle?
Hi there. Thanks for the great intro. So Gourmet Gorilla was originally founded through where we were trying to find a better school lunch program for our son in the South Loop of Chicago. He was 2 at the time, and he went to a preschool. I was working in environmental consulting at the time, and I was also trying to find reuse for brownfield sites in the city of Chicago. So during that time, I came across a lot of urban farming organizations that were growing in the city on brownfield sites or former brownfield sites. And I thought that we could potentially tie the two together and have an urban farm to school lunch program. I didn't really know whether it would work or not, but we approached the school and we replaced the catering company that they were using and started cooking lunch out of a 10 by 10 kitchen. About a year later, we soon contracted with 25 Montessori and preschools, and we had a dilemma because we were still stuck in our 10 by 10 kitchen in a preschool. So we managed to acquire those clients through putting together a free kind of Dreamweaver website online and registering to a bunch of free directories, and got a lot of inquiries within that period of 12 months. So in order to cook school lunches for 25 new schools, we went on Craigslist and found an old Afghanistan restaurant in Lincoln Park, which we cleaned up and got licensed as a catering facility and started cooking for those schools. After about 12 months, we'd gone on to acquire a small company called Green Bag Lunch, which was providing brown bag lunches to 30 schools in the North Shore of Chicago. And along with it, we acquired an online ordering system. With that ordering system, it helped us manage data and grow even further. And we're currently serving 90 schools. We since moved into a larger 4,000 square foot catering facility where we are now. The founding kind of principles of our company were that we wanted to provide higher quality ingredients from more local sustainable sources and move beyond urban farming, but also look at good food from within the region. We knew that in order to provide those meals at cost, we would have to also have efficient labor and processes, so that we could produce the meals from scratch and still do it within the budget constraints that we have. We also know, that the kids need to be able to eat the food, so they need to be able to enjoy the food, and so that's really important too. I'll talk more about that later. So we currently run a central commissary kitchen. Almost 90% of our food goes out in reusable hotel pans. The local state government calls it bulk satellite meals. So we're kind of like a large district kitchen, if you're a school district, that provides meals to a bunch of smaller satellite schools. And those schools consist of preschools, Head Start programs, and public charter schools that have autonomy over their own lunch program as a school food authority. So the process starts when the school or parent goes to our website and orders online. We have custom designed website where parents can order day by day and choose from 20 different items. Or if it's a school, their choices are a bit more limited, but they're on a cycle menu where every item changes from day to day for 20 days and then recycles itself over 3 months and then starts over again. So within our business model, we have certain design rules that we're constrained by. First of all, there's government. So Department of Child and Family Services, National School Lunch Program, Child and Adult Care Food Programs are some of the constraints that are put on our business, which include things like calorie minimums and maximums, percentage of fat that you're allowed to use, the types of grains, the rotation of your fruits and vegetables. Some contracts require you to buy American or use commodities. Or in the lunch line, you're supposed to provide choice, or sometimes you're just supposed to serve them what they're provided each time. The constraints from a cost perspective are that we have to provide a breakfast for $1.90, a lunch for $2.90, and a snack for 90 cents. These numbers are approximate, but give you an idea of the financial constraints that we have to work within our business model. Gourmet Gorilla itself, actually, during its inception, created its own constraints centered around its social mission of providing fresh local ingredients. So we look to source raw, fresh ingredients with proteins that are antibiotic-free. They're grass-fed and organic, we're committed to also community-based businesses, like we use RP's pasta, which is processed outside of our kitchen. It's made in its own facility, but we bring it in. It's a local fresh pasta from Wisconsin. And then also there's, as I mentioned before, the parents and kids. So they've got to like the taste of the food. Color is really important. Cultural diversity and cultural relevance for certain schools, depending on what neighborhood and what city and what area of the states they're in, are really important for us to get right so that we get buy-in from parents, kids, and also the schools themselves. The food doesn't just have to be sourced locally and as sustainably as possible, but it also has to be prepared well and distributed well to the schools so that we maintain quality. So our sourcing, this is purposefully supposed to look complicated. There's a lot of ingredients coming into our kitchen in its raw form. So we get cases and cases of melons and bananas and broccoli, carrots, spices, dairy products, raw meats, and everything has to be processed and cooked into recipes in our kitchen. And it's sourced from as much as possible throughout the Midwest, but we have to intersperse it with things like bananas and pineapples, which we haven't figured out how to grow here yet in the Midwest, but kids love them anyway. Then we're aggregating these ingredients through different providers. Maybe your typical food service or school lunch district will be sourcing from one broadline distributor. Because of our sourcing requirements, we can only get one or two things from each broadline distributor, and then we have to go elsewhere to find other ingredients. So we have Elegant Foods, which brings in our RP's pasta from Wisconsin. We use urban farming organizations for our fresh fruit and vegetable program. And then we go elsewhere for other produce. Perfection Produce is a small aggregator that we get Amish produce from Wisconsin. And then there's other places we can go and search for providers, like the Institutional Food Market Coalition that's in Wisconsin also. So once we get all our ingredients and we come up with our recipes, we put together cycle menus. The cycle menus have to be seasonally appropriate so that when we're bringing in watermelon, it's fresh and it's a good quality. When watermelon goes out of season and it's no longer local, we have to move to another product like apples for our fruit. Those menus also have to comply to those regulations, and that puts additional constraints onto our product. Then we have the dilemma of what to make and what to buy. So this is kind of probably overcomplicated, but basically the idea that I'm trying to get across on this slide is that we have to decide when we're cooking from scratch what to prepare totally from scratch and what to prepare what to order in already processed. So for example, we really aren't good at making making fish sticks, so we bring them in frozen, and they're a sustainable pollock fish stick that we bring in. What that means is the cost goes up and the quality maybe goes down, but the risk of low quality is also reduced because it's made in a large facility, so the consistency is there. But there's a lot more steps in the process for those fish sticks to get to the school, and that means that there's a lot more steps where there is a profit margin taken out, which increases the cost of the product. At the bottom of the slide, where we're getting things directly from the farm, we're paying the farmer directly, and we're making things from scratch. There's a lot less hands that it passes through, therefore there's a lot less profit margins that need to be made along the way, and that allows us to put more money towards the food directly, and then it's up to us to produce a good quality product. In order to do that, though, it adds the complexity of our own business as a processor, because cooking from scratch is inherently more complex than buying frozen fish sticks. Food safety is a big issue with a company like ours, whether it's from sourcing ingredients from local farms that are GAP certified in order to make sure that they're safely grown. People are washing their hands when they're harvesting them. People aren't using too many chemicals or no chemicals. And then also through aggregation, making sure temperatures and are maintained from harvesting all the way through to aggregation. And then once it's received at our kitchen, there's a really complex process where ingredients will get batched into different batches. We need to be able to track those batches. If we get beef that comes in, we need to know where the beef went out the other end to the schools. We need to track time and temperature all the way through our cooking process. And then if we're retherming food on-site to deliver to schools or retherming off-site at a school, we need to know times and temperatures for that. So we try and use as little paper as possible. Everything we do is cloud-based. We use software as a service, cloud-based products like CloudClean for our hand washing, ThermoWorks for temperature control using iPads in our kitchen and out to deliveries, and Fresh Temps that monitors our refrigerators to make sure that we get a text message on the weekend if one of our refrigerators goes down. The processing itself is inherently complex. As I said before, we're receiving raw ingredients. We need to have equipment that is right-sized for the type of facility we have, that is efficient enough to produce the meals in time and good quality with the right amount of labor cost, because we're putting a lot more money towards our food. So we experiment with things like sous vide. We use combi ovens, which reduce shrinkage. We used to use a hamburger, we used to use ice cream scoopers for our hamburgers when we were doing 70 hamburgers. Now that we're doing 5,000 to 6,000 hamburgers on hamburger day, we bought a small Holymatic machine that cranks out 2,000 hamburgers an hour, which helps us get it done in one day. Then there is our distribution. So half of our meals go out hot to preschools that don't have any kitchens, and half of our meals go out cold to charter schools where we have ovens and serving staff that retherm the food. So again, it's time and temperature and making sure things are accurately delivered and heated up so that the food quality is maintained. Our company has been growing annually. It's been doubling in size every year. So at the moment, it's still in a sort of exponential growth phase. Every time that happens, our systems break down and we have to reinvent them. So whether it's human resources, it's data management, it's the type of equipment we're using, it's the delivery methods we're using, it's the size of trucks we use. Everything has to be tweaked, changed, managed, and adapted to on an annual basis during this rapid growth phase. Our current kitchen space is on the left. It's a kitchen that used to be a catering kitchen from 1985. The refrigerators from 1985, we've done some modifications, like it's got totally new mechanicals. And then on the right-hand side is just grabbed off the website, but we're currently closing on a 15,000 square foot USDA certified facility that's 6 minutes down the street from our current space in downtown Chicago. That will allow us to produce about 30,000 meals a day in the next couple of years. There'll be a lot more equipment, a lot more technology implemented there, which will allow us to grow sustainably and act as a much larger food hub going forwards. I'm going to hand you over to Danielle, who's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the trials and tribulations when it comes to growth and human resources, and she'll take it from here.
Thanks, Jason. So just a few minutes just to spend some time talking about the people. As we all know, it's really the folks that are working within organizations that make this all happen. And one of the key points that Jason touched upon when you're a rapidly growing company is how do you hire quick enough, train quick enough, and find that skilled workforce, especially in light of what we're trying to achieve here at Gourmet Gorilla, where we're trying to do things a different way. We're trying to go back to the scratch cooking on a large scale. And so being able to hire really takes a lot of strong partnerships within the community. And where we've found success in terms of hiring are with our relationships with organizations like the local culinary schools, different training programs like Inspiration Corporation here in Chicago, and World Relief, which is an organization that's finding work for refugees. And then finally the Chicago Food Depositories, the local food depositories also oftentimes have training programs, and they've been a great resource because they do a lot of that groundwork in making sure that that individual has been trained, has their certifications, so that when they do arrive here at our company, they're at least that much further along in terms of understanding how to work with food in a safe environment. It's also critical that we find or hire individuals that are vested in our mission. It's a lot of hard work in producing this food every day, and really it's those individuals that are motivated and inspired about making healthier food and bringing healthier food to children throughout the area that really are able to succeed in this type of environment. It takes a lot of creativity and flexibility on the part of individuals, so those are some things that we're constantly looking for when we're hiring as well. People also extend beyond our organization into the schools and communities that we're serving. So just to wrap up, we wouldn't be able to be successful without the education that we are constantly doing within our schools that enhances our programs. So some examples of what we've done throughout the years is an entrepreneurial type curriculum that we've worked with schools on so that the students understand the full cycle of the food that they're eating every day. So one program we implemented was working with an agriculture group at one of our schools to create a product so that they would understand how it's grown, how it's priced, how to market it, doing the recipe, and then delivering it and selling it to the parents through a farmer's market that they had at school, or hands-on applications that we do at schools, especially with the younger children that we're working with, so that they understand the taste and the texture and how it's grown. Just opens their palates and allows them to be more exploratory when they're tasting new foods. And then finally, those partnerships that we have with local urban farming organizations, again, so that it creates the full cycle and allows children to see how it's grown and then have a visit in our kitchen to see what happens to that food afterwards. But it doesn't just happen with the children. We also spend a lot of time educating the schools themselves, their administration, so that they understand how to promote and to talk about food with their children, so that, again, they can encourage them to try new things. And then the parents. So just to wrap up, as Jeff mentioned, when he introduced us, we received a grant, the HUFED grant through the Wallace Center, which we've implemented this year. It was a grant to provide produce bags using schools as hubs, and that's given us an opportunity to actually provide hundreds of bags of produce on a weekly basis through some of our larger charter schools in our urban areas, so the parents can now take that food home, and what we're doing within the school lunchroom now is extending into the homes themselves. So just finally wanted to provide our contact information here in terms of if you'd like to reach out to us, we'd be happy to provide any insight, answer any additional questions, and really appreciate the time today allowing us to share our experiences with you all. Thanks a lot. I'll turn it back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, guys. That was wonderful. And a lot of questions have come in. Jason and Danielle will be answering some questions in text form, and we'll be sure to answer them or ask them out loud after the Cherry Capital Foods presentation. So let me introduce Evan and Kelly now from Cherry Capital Foods. Evan Smith has over 35 years experience in international and domestic food distribution and logistics. Prior to joining Cherry Capital Foods as the Senior Operations Manager in early 2009, he spent 8 years as the CFO of Food for Thought, where he continues on a consulting basis as Vice President. He serves on the Farmer Task Force of the Michigan Food Policy Council, the Traverse City Food and Farm Network, and is on the board of the Grand Traverse Foodshed Alliance. Kelly Lively is a native Michigander who grew up in Metro Detroit and completed a BS in microbiology from Colorado State in 1990. She has worked as an inorganic chemist for a water quality laboratory, served 2 terms as the Leelanau County Drain Commissioner, and has run her own specialty flower farm and florist design business. Lively came to Cherry Capital Foods with real-world experience, bringing more local nutritious food into the kitchen of her local school. After working to initiate local food fundraisers and support the food service director and superintendent in providing more fresh, healthy cafeteria menus, she recognized that farm to school was her passion. She wanted to be part of a business working to rebuild the local food system and joined Cherry Capital Foods soon thereafter. So I think we start with Evan.
Great, thank you, Jeff, and very, very pleased to be here with you to share a little bit of our story and what we're trying to do. Farm to school is so important, and it's part of our social mission as well to reach out to the entire spectrum of growers and eaters across the state of Michigan. So Cherry Capital Foods is relatively young. We started in 2007 selling produce to local restaurants with just 1 truck. And by 2009, we had outgrown our facility, and we moved into a new one that was 3 times the size of where we had been, and we had 3 trucks, and we thought, boy, we really are all set now. And over the next few years, we grew at a rate of about 47%, followed by 65%, and then 48%. And lo and behold, we realized this year that we were outgrowing our 16,000 square foot facility, and we'll be moving into a new 41,000 square foot facility early in the spring of 2014. And so we're now operating with 7 or 8 trucks, and I say 7 or 8 because one of them doesn't run all the time. But we also have 25 employees now. And as we've gone through this growing process, our introduction to farm to school began back in 2008 when the Grand Traverse Area Catholic School System received some monies to test local food in their cafeteria. And we were able to provide them with a lot of local ingredients. As a local food distributor, we were able to cast a larger net and simplify their ordering process. And it was very gratifying that over the course of the early years of this project, the superintendent of the schools noticed a behavioral change in the children after lunch. And while that is certainly nothing you can put on a label, we all know the value intrinsically and anecdotally of the importance of good food for our children. And as we looked at that business, we realized that it was not as profitable as some of our other business, and it required a lot more intensive hand-holding, if you will, but also that it was crucial to our social mission and our involvement in the community, and we wanted to succeed. We were fortunate enough at that time to find that Kelly was looking for exactly the same type of opportunity, and so we brought Kelly Lively on board in 2009 as our special projects coordinator to really help spearhead our farm to school program. And we thought it was important enough that we actually dedicated a position and said, Kelly, go ahead and help us create a better food system for our kids in the schools. So Kelly is going to take the time now to tell you about 3 different projects that we have been involved with, and there's no doubt in my mind you'll hear the passion that she has for this come through in her voice. So Kelly, it's all yours. Kelly?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, this is, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is an important part of my life. And so we have 3 projects right now that are in addition to just our regular farm to school programming. And one is the USDA pilot project that for fresh fruit and vegetables that was initiated. The contracts were let last year from USDA. After some time, they tried to initiate it the year prior, and the USDA recognizes the importance of local foods in schools, and they also recognize the desire of schools to be able to purchase it, as well as the constraints. As Jeff and Danielle mentioned, the constraints on the budgets. So what this project allows schools to do is to buy using their commodity entitlement funds, buy fresh local food. And they were trying with 6 commodity items. They ended up contracting just for 2, and Cherry Capital Foods is providing apples for the Michigan pilot. They only put 2 schools into the project. One, if you can imagine the mitten of Michigan and the Upper Peninsula. One is in Houghton, which is up in the Keweenaw Peninsula, over the bridge. And the other is near Flint, just north of Detroit. So we have just actually delivered all of the apples to the Houghton schools. We took 70 boxes up there day before yesterday, and we've had a couple deliveries down to the Flint area, which I'll tell you that UP schools were so excited to get fresh and what they called local. We feel like we're kind of far away, but to them this was local, and they were really excited to be able to be part of it and hope to expand it. So I think that's the idea, is what the USDA wanted was to work with people who were able to be innovative, be open-minded to the stumbling blocks, and we really haven't had any since getting the proposal in. That was the hardest part of the whole thing. And now that the government's opened up again, we can actually submit for payment, so we'll see how it goes. And then there will be some dialogue with the project participants to see how it went, what were the barriers, what can we do more of. And I imagine they'll open up to more schools next year. The other project that we're working on, and it's an ongoing, we've been working with a food service company called Chartwells, which serves schools all over the country. They're contracting with 144 districts in Michigan. And we've been with them for quite some time, serving about 25 districts up here who felt they couldn't get any local produce from their mainline distributors, and begged to get it from us. So we were granted that ability, which is, working with big corporations can be a difficult process for us small guys. But we ran across a proposal a request for information last spring coming out of Chicago for Chicago Public Schools, and engaged in conversation about that and about bringing apples to Chicago Public Schools. And Chartwells was trying to get their contract extended for another year. And as that process, which I found very interesting because I was right into the thick of Chicago politics, you could see that it was going to fall apart, and Chartwells wasn't going to get the contract. So I started talking to the vice president of their region, of this Midwestern region, which includes Michigan, and I said, you know, I'd love to be able to get Michigan apples into Chicago Public Schools, but I really want to get Michigan apples to Michigan kids. And, you know, I say tongue-in-cheek that I think there should be a law in Michigan that no apple should come from outside of our borders, and we don't need to export so many. We should be giving them all to our own kids. So I went back and forth for several months. We didn't secure the agreement until probably August. And they allowed us to sell them fresh apples, peaches, and pears to all of these 144 districts. And we're based in Traverse City. We had a brand new, well, not new, but new to us, warehouse in the Lansing area that we would work out of. And so we had to figure out distribution from there, which has been a bit of a trick. And then we also had to work with a farmer who was really open, transparent, understanding markets, understanding working with this big company. And we found one who provides the highest quality fruit, and he also then does part of our logistics in delivering to the west side of the state, from Grand Rapids to the Lakeshore. This, I wanted to see if I could find a slide here, has been a big change in our sales in the fall. In the year prior, the school year prior, we sold about $104,000 total to schools, and we're about there right now since the beginning of school this year. So this has been a big growth for our company, and like the others had said before, when you're growing so fast, you have to keep remaking it, and we've had to keep remaking it. But it seems to be working. The schools are happy. We've only heard good things about the apples. We haven't heard any complaints about the prices. We've been trying to be cognizant of staying within market prices, but we really want to be fair to farmers and fair to all the people that we work with. So let's see. Yeah, right now, as far as prices are concerned, we are competing with commodity apples that are coming in at $2.50 a box, and we're still probably selling $4,000, $4,000 to $5,000 a week in apples. So the difference is pretty tremendous. This slide here, you see a picture of these kids that were having a taste test. So the farmer came, our farmer that we work with, Mike Gavin out of Coopersville, and brought apples in, and the kids have a great time meeting. They love to meet the farmer. They love to eat the apples. It's a totally different experience than eating a mealy, soft apple that's been shipped across the country. So it's been a pleasure to be able to have this happen. We've done, oh, here I can see my number now. We've done $76,000 in business with Chartwells since September 1. Schools are about 8% of our sales. So this is actually skewing us right now, because I think Chartwells is our number 2 customer this month. It'll be interesting to see how it proceeds, because again, we're dealing with a big company and they could drop us at any time. So we put out a lot of press. We give them a lot of credit for doing the right thing, in hoping that that will help them continue to do the right thing. The directors in the schools are happy, so so we're happy so far. And then our final project that we've just really become a partner on is a more local farm-to-school project with some local partners here, the Michigan Land Use Institute, the Extension, local Extension, the Northwest Michigan Council of Governments, and the school districts, put together a grant to try to build a consortium of farmers and some local processing, because in our part of the world, that's what we've been missing, is we've got lots of fruit, we've got lots of vegetables, but we don't have a lot of processing in place. We came in kind of at the tail end of this process because as they were putting it together, they were figuring out that they really needed to pay attention to what the pricing was and what their costs were. And as we sat at the table with them, we helped them streamline it because we already have processes in place for the actual distribution, the driving. We have the order system, we have the accounting system, we have the staff, and so the idea was, let's not duplicate this, let's bring it all together. And as Evan said, we're going to move into a new facility in the spring, and in that facility we are going to house the local Food Shed Alliance, and part of that will be this processing equipment that was bought through the grant. So we're hoping to begin with lettuce, because the schools really like to have the lettuce all processed, ready to dump out. And we have a farmer that's sitting on a whole lot of carrots, so we're trying to find a way to make it affordable to buy his carrots, process them, and get them into the schools. And it's a learning curve for everybody, because when you come to school foods, you see this huge market all of these kids need to eat, but then you have to go back to that budget constraint. And many schools don't have any money to subsidize the lunches. So what I've been able to do, and what this company has allowed is at Cherry Capital Foods, was to have a tiered pricing structure, and that has allowed me to bring the price down for the schools, and it's sort of subsidized by our other customers, who are restaurants, caterers, grocery stores, and without that, I don't think that we would be able to do this work. And without a supportive staff and a supportive administration here who says, yeah, this is part of our mission, it is important. Because sometimes I feel like I'm asking for a lot. I don't know how my time is.
Kelly, you're doing fine. Why don't you let me just jump in here with a few
yeah, you bring it home, Evan,
conclusion.
because we have, yeah, that's great.
I think that Kelly touched on some of the real key components from our standpoint, and something that I would point out to anyone interested in getting into the farm to school program is that it is not a high margin business, for one thing. For another, I think that is important both for the farmers and for us as a company to have multiple income streams. The farmers can't put all of their apples, if you will, in one basket to go to schools. They need to be able to send apples into farmers markets. They need to be able to send them to processors. They need to be able to do some value-added processing of them, and schools are just one more component. I think it's really important, though, to consider that if we don't place a priority on feeding our children, what really is important to us. And so with that in mind, too, I think that the food safety component, the ability to track and trace, we have third-party certification from both the USDA and AIB, the American Institute of Bakery, that come in and verify that our food is safe, and we can provide the assurances to these school districts that their kids are getting fresh produce that has been handled properly, has been at the right temperatures, and that they can count on our ability to let them know where it came from and handle any problems that might arise. And I think that one of the other lessons that we're learning is that the difference between working in an urban school district and rural school districts is very big, and your solution has to be tailored to your market. We're able to deliver large volumes to the urban markets in our state, but some of the rural schools have much more specific needs, and we can't always facilitate doing that. So it may be purely farm direct in some of those. But I really think that the other important component here is the partners that you choose. And I think that we've heard this from the Gourmet Gorilla, and we'll echo it, that it is important to have partners that both support your mission, are willing to work with you on that educational component, and seek out creative solutions really to solving the dilemma of how we get good food to our most important resource. And so again, I encourage you to seek out those local solutions and be part of the solution rather than just being on the side watching. So Jeff, I'll turn it back over to you, and thank you and everyone that's bothered to listen to us. That we really appreciate the opportunity to share, and would be more than happy to answer any questions or be available either online now or afterwards, just as Danielle and Jason said they would. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Evan and Kelly. We have some great questions, so I will start the Q&A section. Let's start by talking about financing. So why don't you each talk about how you both speak about rapid growth. You both speak about moving into different facilities. Can you talk about where the money comes from to do that? So Evan, if you want to start, and then Jason and Danielle.
Sure, thank you. Cherry Capital Foods is in a unique position. We are in a community that's very supportive, and we also have the primary owner of Cherry Capital Foods has a commitment to both local food and to local economies, and is in a position to help us by loosening his personal purse strings and funding the growth and expansion. It's very, very difficult if you have to do this with bank loans and traditional lending sources, but that's a crucial component going forward, is that we will be moving more into those traditional economic opportunities than we are right now. But in the early stage, we're fortunate enough to be in a position that we're funded by the owner.
And then for Gourmet Gorilla, as is Jason, we originally started our company on a $20,000 credit card from Citibank, which was interest-free for 12 months. And then soon ran out of that money and asked Action Chicago for another $8,000. Then we realized when we had 25 schools as clients, we needed some working capital, which we had no idea that we needed before, to actually buy food and hire people and buy equipment, and move to this new Afghanistan restaurant that we inhabited in our second year, and borrowed some money from friends and family, about $25,000, which kind of got us through that stage. After that, we were pretty much on our own. We had online ordering from the Green Bag Lunch, which helped with our cash flow. The rest of the schools paid net 30, but the online ordering helped pre-fund some of our expenses during the month while we were waiting to get paid from our other schools. So we kind of accidentally got lucky with that. Then after that, we grew again when we doubled in size. In our, I think it was the end of our second year, we had 2 years worth of tax returns, approached a couple of banks, found a local bank which lent a credit line for $100,000, CapEx line for equipment. We migrated that CapEx line over to another community bank and increased it to $200,000. At that time, we were eligible for a working line of, receivables line to help smooth out our cash flow curve for food and payroll. And then just recently applied for a $2.5 million SBA 504 or 7A loan, which was dead in the water until today because the government shutdown. Was supposed to be closing on a building and buying lots of equipment with that money. So to date, we've been funded primarily through our own profit generated through revenues and bootstrapping, used equipment, scrimping and saving every penny, and I'm sure we'll probably need some other sources of funding as we continue to exponentially grow.
Great. Thank you. Very helpful, I think. People. Jason, let's stick with you. Danielle wrote an answer to this question, but I think it's worth talking about a little bit more. Eric asked, if Gourmet Gorilla is sourcing directly from farmers and framing that channel as low cost, does that mean that those farmers are adjusting their expectations in regards to price from the direct market to wholesale market levels? So you can talk about how you lower input costs.
Yeah, so when we look at costs from local farmers, we're not talking about price gouging the farmer. We're buying at whatever the farmer is offering us as a rate. It's normally a wholesale price, which is because of our volume. We'll be buying maybe 1,000 pounds of produce a day of fruit, and 1,000 pounds of vegetable, and also 1,000 pounds of protein a day right now. So they normally give us better pricing than the farmers market just because they want the volume and it helps them scale. So what we're talking about is when we take the raw ingredients cost and we add it to our labor cost in our kitchen to take raw chicken and breadcrumbs and turn it into chicken nuggets, for example, we would maybe save $600 in one day using antibiotic-free local chicken and locally sourced bread for breadcrumbs, and turning it into our own chicken nuggets using our own labor versus buying a Tyson chicken nugget.
Okay, great. Kelly, Laura asks, can you clarify how schools are able to use commodity dollars to purchase locally?
Well, every year in February, schools have to submit to USDA their commodity commitments. They're allotted some dollar amount in commodities, and they can allot it for protein, which is largely what they do, for fruit, vegetables, all of it. And then it's basically just a paper trail. So they pay. What the school actually pays out of their budget would be the shipping cost, and USDA and the Department of Defense buy a lot of produce, and they have that warehoused, and then that's where it comes from.
Okay, and sticking with Cherry Capital, I think this is really a question for Evan. Can you elaborate on the difference between urban and rural schools? In other words, why do rural school districts have more specific needs?
Sure. It's a really good question, but I think an illustrative example might be helpful here. The Grand Traverse area school system, TCAPS, is probably one of the largest in area in the state of Michigan, and they have over 35 schools. And in order to get product to each of those schools, which includes obviously elementary, middle school, and high schools, you need a delivery system that can hit 35 schools in a day, or at least over a 2-day period. And that is something that an individual farmer really can't handle and doesn't want to. It's very expensive, and if you're only dropping off 1 box of apples, you're losing money doing that. So when you look at the urban schools, and Traverse City isn't urban by any stretch of the imagination, but the sheer number of schools in that district make it more urban-like in its structure. And if we then look at, by contrast, Leelanau County, which is that little finger of Michigan, there's probably no more than a dozen schools in that whole area, and they are spread out over almost the same amount of space as the ones in Grand Traverse County, but they are much smaller and much more closely tied to their small community and farmers. And I think that it's easier for them in that district to say, yeah, we know that farmer, we know the Bardenhagens, we'll just buy from them directly, and he can drop it off on the way to the bank. So I really think that when you look at even the volume that's necessary, those schools may have 100 students or 200 or 300, as opposed to looking at the urban schools in Traverse City where you've got, 1,800 kids in the high school and 1,500 in the middle schools. So it really is about density and numbers, and hopefully that clears that issue up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you each tell me the sort of the process of getting new school customers? So do schools approach you? Do you have a large sales approach to sell new schools? Jason, you want to start first and then come back to Cherry Capital? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, where do we get customers from? Mostly it's been word of mouth. And so because we're already doubling in size every year, we've had to be really careful about not growing too quickly. One, from a funding perspective, and two, just from it takes time to get systems and processes adapted and hiring new people. And if you do it too quickly, then you can make a mess of everything, and you'll take on new clients, but you'll lose old ones. So it's something that you have to be really careful to manage. At the same time, though, if you don't have a strategic sales force going out there, you may end up with kind of a reactionary wrong type of client and not the right type of client that's targeted for your specific business model. So kind of you have to be selective and strategic. For us, though, at the moment, we don't have a sales force. We just have Daniela and Jason.
And Kelly?
Well, we, in our local region, is pretty intimate. We all kind of know each other. There's a lot of word of mouth, and there's a lot of organizational overlap. So that's largely how we reach out. We also send out a list every week, a live list, and so it's really easy for anybody to sign on to get it, any school service, food service director. So one speaks to another, and it's just sort of a networking. We don't have a huge sales staff out drumming up schools. It's kind of a different than other kinds of sales. Then we also, I guess, we have this the bigger operations, the Chartwells, the Sodexos, the food service companies, and we also then strike up relationships with those organizations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Kelly, is that part of that marketing strategy to the schools is to engage some of these food service providers and showing them that we can be an effective partner so that they're able to tout the fact that they're involved in farm to school. They may not know how to do it, but the fact that they know us allows them to have that in their portfolio, if you will. And so a lot of our work in networking, is based on relationships like the MSU Center for Regional Food Systems, or working with the Michigan Good Food Network, and just going to conferences and just talking about what you do, and just creating that awareness, because many of them sit in isolation not really knowing how to begin.
The other thing about the big food service companies is that when a school is run by one of those outfits, the local farmer is largely shut out. So their only avenue to get in is through a distributor like ourselves, because we have all of the certifications and the third-party audits, the food safety systems in place.
So tell me about the food safety. Does Cherry Capital work with the growers on food safety, getting GAP certified, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we really do. It's a big part, and we have other partners on that as well in the community. But we inspect every farm that we do business with, and the first question is, are you GAP certified? Is it USDA The state of Michigan has an environmental assessment program that we sort of call GAP Light, but we go through and talk about food safety all the way through, monitor what they do have, make recommendations for improvements, and also put them in touch with some of our partners that can help them go down that path, because I think it's inevitable that if you want to stay in this farm-to-school business, that that third-party certification is going to be required going forward. Right now, we're able to provide that level of insulation, as Kelly mentioned, but we have to work constantly with bringing more farmers on and giving them the resources to improve that.
Does Gourmet Gorilla go to that level of interaction with your suppliers, with your farmers?
I'm sorry, I was answering a bunch of questions. Were you still talking about GAP certification?
Yeah, on the farms. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so far we'll use like an aggregator. If it's really local, like Perfection Produce, then we use them as an insurer and a verifier. Mm-hmm. So as long as we're covered through their entity, then it's their job to do all of their verification. So it might be a GAP Light or full GAP, but we need them to insure us as a school lunch provider, and for them to take care of their farmers. So except for, we've worked with, City Farm and Growing Home here and stuff like that for much smaller scale things like fresh fruit and vegetable programs. So that's what we've done so far.
Okay, yeah, it's very interesting to me, and I want to sort of point out that these two food hubs are very different, right? You have the programs that Gourmet Gorilla really concentrates their efforts on are for the consumer, right? So they'll Jason and Danielle talked about going into the classroom, doing a lot of education of the consumer and the parents of the consumer. In Cherry Capital, you hear going sort of more to the metal with their supply side, with the producers. Now, of course, there's interaction. The nature of a food hub is the middle, and so you will have interaction on both ways. But just looking at the lens of the types of sort of extra services that are provided, it's interesting to me to see that difference. Moreover, a major part of the Gourmet Gorilla model is the processing, whereas Cherry Capital Foods does very little processing at all. It's just very interesting to see two very different models engaging with the same or similar type of clients. So there is a question actually about how Gourmet Gorilla measures the behavioral changes in their customers, the students and their parents. Do you have any metrics on that?
So I've been to a few like non-profit meetings and things like that where getting data is critical to measure the success of a grant program. As a for-profit, we haven't put any resources or haven't been able to put any resources towards getting metrics on that other than anecdotal things from the schools. So when we start a new program and switch out a current provider at a school, especially in a low-income area, we get things like there's less gas in the classroom, they're paying more attention, they're more focused throughout the day, they're more stable in terms of their sugar intake. But it's all anecdotal to date. Either when we grow more and we have more funding to put towards that, we can do more research, or if we get a grant, we'll do the same thing, because it would be great for us as a selling point for sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, the stories of the food yielding increased attention warms my heart. I'm sure many others on this webinar as well. So I want to give a little closeout question and ask you each to try to answer where do you think the trends are going. You can either answer for your company or a broader answer, your choice. But where are we going in farm to school programs from your perspective? Devin, you want to start first and then hand it to Jason or Danielle?
Sure, I can. I think that the USDA through the pilot program that we're in and that is in Florida and Michigan is an indication that there is a growing awareness that we need to feed our children better food. $1.50 for a meal is very difficult. I think that on a policy level, it's a discussion that is actually been part of why we haven't had any government for the last week. You know, how are we going to spend these farm bill dollars? Where are we going to allocate them? And hopefully there is a growing awareness that the involvement and investment in our most vulnerable and precious resource is where it should be. I think it's going to continue to be a struggle on many levels, and we're going to have to look locally for some of these solutions. But I think it's safe to say from our perspective that we're going to do everything we can to see that it continues to grow and that that we get all the help we can from whatever level.
And then for us, we at Gourmet Gorilla, we see it as like a really long-term process. It takes time to rebuild a broken food system. In the Midwest, we want to continue to work closely and collaborate with local aggregators and growers to create demand through school food service and institutional food service, so that you can rebuild and revitalize this kind of this economy. And I think the way we grow our business model, we want to have decentralized kitchens throughout the Midwest, one in Detroit, one in Milwaukee, one in Chicago. They can act as processing centers for the other locations and build a sort of regional network of processing kitchens that feed off of each other and kind of have a synergy that create other efficiencies and spur demand. And so we'll continue to innovate and create a Gorilla Kitchen that works really well, and we hope eventually to bring that to districts so we can give them our program to work with.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank Jason and Danielle, Kelly, and Evan. I hope this webinar has inspired you to deep thoughts about how food hubs can be a key element in successful farm-to-school programs. This webinar is being recorded. It will be archived on our website along with the 50 other webinars that we've done in the past. Feel free to send others who you think you would like to have heard this presentation, and take some professional development time yourself and dig through our excellent archives, ngfn.org/webinars. This webinar will be up within a few business days. Our webinars are organized into topics. If you look in the left-hand navigation area, dig into whatever interests you. We offer our NGFN webinars on the third Thursday of each month at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, noon 30 Pacific. Sign-up links are at that same site, ngfn.org/webinars. In November, we'll look at some top-notch ways that trainers have solved the problem of teaching farmers the necessary business and financial skills to plan and run their operations successfully. One featured panelist will speak on an amazing curriculum designed especially for women farmers, and we will present an overview of our searchable collection of curated tools and curricula available to anyone. And for the holiday season, we'll look at how some innovative food banks have been able to leverage their significant infrastructure and buying power to get local and regional good food to all people. You can let us know in the post-webinar survey if you'd like to automatically be registered for any or all of our upcoming webinars. So let me just take a moment to explain our conundrum. We have been offering these webinars for years. We bring you the country's experts on topics that are timely with inspirational and actionable content. We have been told many times that we should really charge for these webinars. Other organizations and companies charge very high fees for their webinars, but We are committed to making our content available to everyone and anyone. If we were to charge, for instance, those nonprofits who need assistance most would not have access. Students, our next generation of innovators and good food champions, would not have access. So, what to do? For those of you who are able to afford to pay, please open a web browser right now. Go ahead. I'm waiting. And type in the address you see here. Donations can be as small as $10, but consider that according to one survey, the lowest price webinar with an average length of 73 minutes, the length of most of our webinars, was $76. You are paying for your education. You are subsidizing the next generation of innovators. And this donation is fully tax deductible. Foodhub.info, I mentioned, is a food hub of information, research, case studies, a map of many of the food hubs across the country. The NGFN Food Hub collaboration is working closely with 9 food hubs across the country to document their stories. Read about our study hubs, including Cherry Capital Foods, on our website. There are even links to technical assistance providers with experience in aggregation and distribution. The NGFN Food Hub collaboration is building a community of practice of food hub managers and staff, and also food hub supporters. We have a newsletter about every month, technical assistance, and networking opportunities, and more. In the post-webinar survey, indicate to us if you'd like more information about this food hub community of practice. Foodshedguide.org is our site for producers wanting to adapt to the changing food business landscape. We have instructive text and case studies with an emphasis on how to have a viable business in a food value chain. You can find the NGFN on YouTube, on Twitter, and on our website, ngfn.org. The Wallace Center is also on Facebook. Search for Wallace Center at Winrock International. Again, if you haven't already, sign up for our email updates. You can just let us know in the post-webinar survey. We'll sign you right up. Please contact us at any time. Our email address is contact@ngfn.org. The NGFN would like to thank you for your time today, and again, let me encourage you to fill out the survey that will open your web browser in just a moment. Thank you, and this concludes the webinar.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected. Goodbye. The